That was a great and mighty walk. The first half going from the foundings of African civilization all the way up to the Arab invasions, the Arab onslaught, and the mass Islamic conversion of North Africa. And that's just halfway through. He also goes into colonialism, chattel slavery, Christian invasion, and the mass Christian conversion of what has come to be called sub-Saharan Africa, and on into the civil rights integration movement. A Great and Mighty Walk, financed and produced by Wesley Snipes and narrated and researched by Dr. John Henry Clark, is one of the greatest works of documentary filmmaking and mass historical education I've ever come across. And happy to share it. This is BroDiallo Show, Q4 Radio. Um, I've been absent, but I'm here. I've been coping with an injury. Today is, of course, March 8th in the year of your Lord, 2021. I'm broadcasting on Q4 Radio. I'm in the city of Chirac, state of Illinois, in the United States of America. The dwindling empire, everything from infrastructure to faith and institutions. The United States is following the typical path of a declining empire, and the elites who have forced us all into this rat race are doing what the elites in all systems do. They're smashing and grabbing, trying to hollow out the society economically and leave the masses to fend for ourselves. And all the while, they're telling us to obey the laws and to have some type of respect for the state, and they want us to behave as good citizens as they behave as parasites exploiting the masses and trying to kill off the world for short-term quarterly profits. Anyway, that was a bit of an overextended introduction. I've been dealing with an injury. You probably can't tell. I'm in enormous amount of pain, but I'm here. I'm trying to work. Shout out to Q4 Radio and Studios for working with me. I'm getting better slowly and surely. But all that aside, I have limited time. Today's show is the saga of Black masculinity. And when I talk about the saga of Black masculinity, I'm strictly going from chattel slavery to the modern era for Black man within the Western Hemisphere. This is something we continue to debate, and I think it's something very important. But before that, I wanted to speak on the passage of the HR 7. Well, I wanted to cover a lot of things, but in the times that I've been away, there's been a lot of monumental legislation coming out of the Biden administration that is directly and indirectly connected to the saga of Black masculinity. And if you know what a saga is, it is a long, drawn out, extremely dramatic, with highs and lows story. It is an engrossing story. It is a dramatic story, and often steeped in struggle and pain and triumph and all of that. It's a whole bunch of drama. That's what a saga is. And when you, being a Black man, a cisgendered heterosexual in the modern era, I qualify as a gender conforming cisgendered heterosexual Black man or US citizen, Afro American, all of that. I've kind of been on this ride. I didn't buy a ticket for it. I didn't volunteer for it, but they jumped me in when they knifed my umbilical cord. So it begins, to quote Boots Riley. I was born into it, and I am a product of it. Some would say a victim of it. Some would say a beneficiary of it, depending on how you conclude the Black man's status in the Western Hemisphere in the modern era. To some, we are oppressors. Some, we are salvation. To some, we are subhuman. Some we are, or we imagine ourselves to be superhuman. And it is quite a saga to for black men to be an oppressed oppressor, or to be an exploited exploiter, or to be a preyed upon predator. And we exist in both these boxes. Or as some insane Negro had once said, black men, straight, cisgendered, heterosexual black men are the white people of black people. Now, all my life, I thought white people were the white people of black people, but I guess we done moved the white man out of the way. And I'm just like, well, my credit score don't reflect that. But anyway, well, before I get too deep into that, there's this controversy about Black Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter is just hitting home runs, knocking it out of the park as the modern day civil rights movement and even ideology. It will be in history books, just like we look at those old pictures of integrationists, Rosa Parks on the bus, the sanitation workers strike under the leadership of Dr. King, or under the support, he wasn't really the leader, but under the support of Dr. King and the Black Man, I Am a Man, the water hoses and police dogs. Black Lives Matter, no matter how you feel about it, has cemented its presence in the storied history, or the triumphant or tragic history, again, there's many ways to interpret this, of Black American history. So your grandchildren and your great grandchildren are going to have to be looking at old picture books and posters and online posts, and they're going to believe, just like we believe, that the NAACP, the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, the Student Nonviolent Coordinated Committee, Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, and Ralph Abernathy, the Black Lives Matter and its founders and its figureheads have cemented their place in history. They were nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize. If you go look at BroDiallo show from a couple of episodes ago, I went into detail about not just how Black Lives Matters was financed, but who directs the finance. I also talked about how anytime any Black individual or Black organization comes up for the Nobel Peace Prize, we have to immediately look at them with a great level of suspicion, because the Nobel Peace Prize is not noble, and it's got nothing to do with peace. Or as the Western civilization, or as our oppressors, or as the colonizers define peace to be, no one is messing with the money. A time of peace under capitalism means that the elites are able to generate profits without any type of disruption to their profits. That doesn't matter if bombs are dropping, if people are starving, if the roads are crumbling and the bridges are crumbling. There can be all kind of chaos and disruption, and you will look at the mainstream corporate media, or the mainstream historians, or the modern politicians and politicians of the past. There can be all sorts of disruption. You can have unemployment rates, especially in the Black community, that are as higher than depression level unemployment. You can have daily shootings, carjackings, rapes. You can have a nationwide ring of child sex trafficking. But the media will say, this is peacetime. You can have an ongoing military campaign of atrocious drone warfare, where the United States is drone bombing covertly and overtly in 24 countries. Assassinations, coup d'etats. You can have a U.S. military base on a sovereign country that it is sanctioning, Cuba, Guantanamo Bay, and all that could be happening. But as long as commerce is being conducted and profits are being generated, we're at peace. And I'm saying, so when you hear these terms in corporate media, you can understand what they're saying. Peace is not the absence of death and conflict. And peace is the economy is functioning in the interest of the elite is a peace. And you can have a nation where there are no gunshots fired. You can have a nation where there is no violence, no hardship, no struggle. But if those people stand up and say, we're going to utilize the natural resources of this nation to feed, clothe, shelter, and enrich the lives of our citizens, then that country automatically becomes a terrorist country, even if it doesn't have a military. Look at Grenada, Honduras, Haiti, countries that are not a military threat to anyone will be invaded, occupied, overthrown in the name of peace. So if you are a US citizen, if you are a human being living on planet Earth, you need to understand what peace is and what peace isn't as defined by the system. Sometimes when you hear peace in the media or when you hear violence, sometimes you got to support the quote unquote unrest, uprisings, insurgents, because those terms are reserved for people who disrupt the economy. But a lot of us believe, well, disrupting the economy, I support the economy. You sound like a chicken supporting Kentucky Fried Chicken. You sound like a cow supporting McDonald's. You are a commodity, a resource. You are. They don't even hide it. They call us human resources. But I digress. Black Lives Matter. There was a report issued that many people are celebrating, the reduction in police homicides since the rise of the quote unquote Black Lives Matter movement. Excuse me. The police are killing fewer people in big cities. Police reform and the police, there is not only a reduction in the number of police killing and reported incidents of police brutality, but there also is a marked rise in investigations and even prosecutions of police who engage in misconduct. And the corporate media, the oppressors, are crediting Black Lives Matter for a reduction. Now, this is a lie. This is a lie that is going to be sold to our children, our grandchildren, great-grandchildren, and all our descendants. Just like the lie that was told to us when we were in grade school, us old heads, us folks in our 40s and 30s and 50s even. But the people, once you get to the 50-year-old Black folks and the 60-year-old Black folks, a lot of them are a lot wiser because they were around for the 68 riots. They were children, but they were around. Me, I was born after all that. I was born in what they call the post-segregation era or the post-civil rights era. All that had been done. Malcolm had been murdered. King had been murdered. Fred Hampton had been assassinated. The civil rights bills has been signed. The colored only or colored entrance signs were all down by the time I was born. But my mother and my grandmother, my great aunt, some of my older uncles, I have some uncles born on this side of the civil rights movement. I have some uncles born on the other side of the civil rights movement. My grandma had 6 kids over a span of time that, my grandmother was born growing up during the Great Depression, World War II. And some of my uncles, one of my uncles used to tell me, he's passed away now, that he participated. And one of my uncles went to Vietnam. Another one of my uncles participated in the 68 riots. Whenever I was in a car with him or on the bus or walking, there was this iconic black street called Prospect. Y'all might have seen me on the BroDiallo broadcast wearing my Prospect shirt. That's the hood. Anybody know? When they tell you, you go to Kansas City, stay off Prospect. Let me tell you, you go to Kansas City, go to Prospect. That's the black community. Stop letting people convince us to shun our people and our communities. But I digress. He used to talk about the 68 riots riding up and down that street and talk about, we worked our way up this street, and he would still have fond memories about the things that he looted when he rioted in the civil rights riot. But the lie that they're telling about Black Lives Matter, I'm just saying, I was born after that. So I was told the lie all throughout my childhood, going to D.A. Holmes Elementary School, Knott's Elementary School, Southeast Junior High School, Bishop Hogan High School, and my public and private education in predominantly Black schools in the predominantly Black community, that we got our freedom. Even though I still lived under segregation, it was no longer legal segregation, it was economic segregation, but I wasn't complaining. Real talk, happy to be amongst Black folks exclusively, especially coming up. Couldn't be around, but let me just stay on the path. I was told that Dr. King kneeling and praying, that Dr. King allowing white people to spit on him, Dr. King allowing white people to throw cups of urine at him, to call him, we know what they called him. I was told that Dr. King allowing white men to blow up his home and try to murder him and his daughters and son and his wife, and Dr. King refusing to allow armed guards to be posted at his home after the Ku Klux Klan and AKA FBI put a bounty on his head. I was told King's passive, peaceful resistance, King's capacity to love our enemies, King's unwillingness to strike a blow against people who are harming him for no other reason than asserting his humanity was the reason I was free. That's how I got free from segregation. That's how we were freed from segregation. And that's the lie. And now the mainstream media and established Negroes are constructing a brand new historical lie that Black Lives Matter has caused a reduction by marching in the streets, hashtags, public service announcements, waving rainbow flags and RBG flags and chanting and taking the podium at Bernie Sanders campaign rallies, all this peaceful, loving things, yet peaceful, nonviolent resistance has conquered yet another entrenched racist issue in America. That's another lie, and it's crazy to me. It's freaking crazy to me. And just like they gave Dr. King a peace prize, a Nobel Peace Prize, now they want to give Black Lives Matter a Nobel Peace Prize because they want to promote this lie. In 2020 and 2019, I was in the streets of Chicago. I saw with my own eyes. You couldn't walk anywhere in the financial district, on the Gold Coast, in these predominantly white economic centers of retail and investment, and the whole city was boarded up. I couldn't even drive a straight path from my home to the local Whole Foods to get my vegan peanut butter chocolate chip cookies without going through 2 or 3 checkpoints. They called out the National Guard. They used these big dump trucks and big trash trucks and this big industrial equipment to block off neighborhoods all over Chicago. I was there when, I don't call it looting, when Black youth were discovering, they were engaged just like Columbus. They came to liberate the retail sector and was relieving some of these pernicious corporations of their ill-gotten material goods. I was there for the armed rebellion. I saw Black people breaking the law and rebelling against the system that has dehumanized and afflicted them for generations. I saw with my own eyes what stopped the police homicide, what made the police stand back. I joined the line when the police came with riot gear to attack young people, so they rallied us older Black folks to stand in line to be a physical barrier between the kids. And I seen the burnt out shop, the Walmart that got looted, and every single business had boarded up. It looked like a hurricane was coming through town. And we don't get hurricanes in Chicago, not yet. Everything's up for grabs in climate change, but every business was boarded up. These businesses lost billions of dollars in revenues, had to spend hundreds of millions of dollars on extra security, millions of dollars on repairs and boarding up. And that's what we learned. Ronald Reagan told us that white people operate off of mutually assured destruction. They don't operate off of morality, justice, what's right and wrong, good or bad. They go off of mutually assured destruction. They call war a peace is when they dominate and can exploit you without issue. War is when you put a disruption into, when you break the cycle of exploitation by any means necessary. So I asked you, if we saw America in flames, if we saw multinational corporations having to spend their profits on securing their retail sites, and as a result of that, because Black Lives Matter have been chanting and hashtagging for almost a decade now, with no change. And just like with Martin Luther King, marched for a decade with no change. But as soon as Black people, as Malcolm X said, started busting heads and burning stores, all of a sudden white folks was like, oh, let's break out the pen and paper and negotiate. Let's negotiate. Just like in Afghanistan, the white man went to Iraq and Afghanistan and said, we're going to kick ass and take names, or whatever George W. Bush said. And now they're over there begging the Taliban, begging the insurgents, please sit to the table, let's talk. And they are like, oh, I thought you were going to bomb us to the Stone Age, which wasn't that big of a fallback because we were already in the Dark Ages. So it wouldn't be that much of a loss for us. You stand to lose. I mean, the head of the Taliban said, my soldiers are as eager to die as your soldiers are eager to live. So if you really want to tangle with us, let's make it happen, Captain. So, and that's what? Mutually assured destruction. And Black folks, we didn't even have an armed insurgency. We didn't have guerrilla factions. We didn't have an organized armed uprising. It was sporadic and emotional, not consistent and strategic. And they couldn't even deal with that. So imagine if we got organized. But that's only, let's just imagine. But all that being said, if you don't believe, or if you don't understand, or if you don't conclude that Black youth taken to the streets with bricks, throwing bottles, busting windows, smashing up retail fronts, is the reason why the police were told by their handlers on high, fall back, leave them black folks alone, retract, retreat, stop. If you don't believe that's why prosecutors were saying, listen, Hank, I love you. You know I stand by you, but I gotta prosecute you. I gotta indict you. You know, I just can't let this slide because, you know, the black people will burn everything down. If you don't understand that that's the reason why the police have given us whatever, as Dale Jones said, why they loosen up to get a tighter grip. When white folks lose the war, they work on winning the peace. You can lose a war and win the peace. You can lose a war and then sit down at the negotiation table and write down and get everything you were trying to get in the war, you can get as you negotiate for peace. That's what this HR 7120 is. The so-called George Floyd Justice and Policing Act. That's the peace. So I say all of that it is a goddamn lie to give Black Lives Matter credit for the reduction, or even the so-called Black Lives Matter protests credit for a reduction in police homicides and an increase or a more enthusiastic investigation and prosecution of homicidal cops, because everything that actually provoked the change, everything that brought us change, Black Lives Matter is against. Black Lives Matter in their own document, and go look up, they have a 10-point plan, they have principles, values. Black Lives Matter is very good in articulating their positions, including their accepted methodology and their rejected methodology. And everything that you can materially point to that brought about real change. Because if you're stupid enough to think making a moral appeal or a trending hashtag is enough to stop these bloodthirsty Krakens, to stop them from doing what they've been doing relentlessly for generations, use a fool. It's the fact that their economic and physical infrastructure was threatened. And they couldn't escalate. They went as far as they could in repression. In terms of arrest, one time in Brooklyn, they made 1,300 arrests in a couple of hours. I, with my own eyes, saw the tanks, saw the mobile surveillance unit. It was hard to tell. Some people were saying they were and they weren't, but I saw the surveillance plane, and some people said they were unmanned drones. Some people said that the drones had weapons, but if you ever see like a tactical drone or a surveillance drone, they fly where you can just see the silhouette. So I know there was some high tech. I don't know if it was armed, because again, this stuff is illegally being utilized against US citizens. But I know they brought out everything, but they were thinking, well, you know, a lot of our oppressors' weapons are self-limiting. Their weapons are so deadly and devastating that they're also self-limiting. So anyway, all I'm saying is that they did everything they thought they could strategically do to suppress the anti-police, anti-repression, anti-brutality uprising and rebellion. And they couldn't suppress it because they knew if we send in the Army Rangers, if we tell the National Guard to go guns hot, it will be over for us because of optics. This is a global system. So if our brothers on the African continent, if the Chinese could turn on television and America has its own Tiananmen Square massacre, where hundreds of US citizens are gunned down by the US agencies, that would expose the US as an illegitimate actor for people who still believe it's legitimate. So they were like, we can't go full tactical military, not because they love us, not because they respect life, but because it wouldn't work for them. It would backfire on them. For every Black citizen they killed in the street here, they would create 100 enemies overseas. So that's what, one thing about this enemy, they are irrational, but they're very tactical and strategic at the same time being utterly insane. That's how psychopaths are. A psychopath will want to eat you alive, but they're going to be in a position. They also are very manipulative, very cunning, very persuasive, at the same time being extremely savage. That's a psychopath. And this is a psychopathic system ran by psychopaths. Read the psychopathic personality disorder. But I digress. So you can't claim to bring progress to the people when you and your organization denounce the very moves and tactics that brought progress to the people. Let me give you an example. There was a man by the name of Hawk Newsom. And Hawk Newsom became famous during last year's George Floyd protest because he said to Fox News, CNN, MSNBC, I quote, "If you don't give Black folks justice, we will burn this system down." And white folks love this because they wanted to, quote unquote, highlight the violence of the protesters. And immediately, Black Lives Matter, while Black people were in the street literally burning the system down, the Black Lives Matter wanted the world to know that Mr. Hawk Newsom is not affiliated with Black Lives Matter. And they denounced it. The Black Lives Matter denounced violence. They denounced rioting. They denounced looting. Look it up. Just Google Black Lives Matter looting, Black Lives Matter violence, Black Lives Matter riots. And you will see nothing but articles of the official Black Lives Matter movement denouncing, distancing, and condemning Black people doing what we had to do to make this Kraken, make this system listen to us. The only thing that has ever worked, everything Black people got in this country, they got through shedding their blood. Word. To quote BDP, who was quoting Kwame Ture. Kwame Ture said, in order to drink from a damn water fountain, to take our money that we work for and earn, to sit at a lunch counter and enjoy a peaceful meal, in order to walk the streets unmolested, unharmed, in order to be able to go to bed and not wake up in the Black community and see black bodies swinging from the trees because white boys wanted to have fun after throwing back a few beers, in order to just get basic recognition of our humanity, in order to just go to a damn school and sit at a damn desk and learn a damn lesson, we had to shed blood. Nothing we have in this country did not come at without having to shed blood. Not one thing that these Krakens gave us, they gave us freely and without demanding a pound of flesh. You name anything Black people look at as a privilege, as a right, as an opportunity, as a luxury, you freaking name it, and I can point to somebody who had to bleed for that, who had to sacrifice their life, their health, who was crippled, who had their genitals bitten off by dogs, face down water hoses, and snipers and bombings for the most basic essential things that we take for granted now. The fact that you can work hard and buy you a nice car without some redneck cop pulling you over, and we still going through it. After shedding all that blood, we still go through it. It's a Black woman who was put in jail because the cop saw her driving a BMW or a Mercedes and felt that she shouldn't be able to have such a nice car. So they put her literally in a mental hospital when she claimed, "This is my car." You're like, you must be crazy. In 2017, 2016. So if you're an organization like Black Lives Matter that says we do not in any way condone violence or the shedding of blood, then you can't take credit for any progress. Not even if you say, it's different saying, hey, I'm a nonviolent person. It's a difference between being personally nonviolent and condemning violence. There's a difference. Because even in our oppressors, they had certain, like the Quakers, like the Mennonites, there were certain communities and factions and religious groups in the United States that were pacifists or nonviolent. And what they would do is they would join the military and be medic, provide medical services. So if you're a nonviolent organization, you can support the struggle without violating your principles. I know nonviolent white people that provide psychological services to ex-veterans. So when they come back from overseas after slaughtering innocent people, and if it gnaws at their consciousness, will help them to heal, the wounded warriors of America. And those people say, I'm nonviolent, even though they're helping to heal violent people. So there's no nonviolent person. It's crazy. So this is another hustle. They're doing the same thing in 2021 that they did in 1968. It's controlled opposition. And our Black folks didn't get civil rights by doing what Dr. King told us to do. And Dr. King even acknowledged. Dr. King was marching around this country for a decade, praying and bowing and being peaceful for justice. And they just laugh at him. They used to get ready for Dr. King. Oh, Dr. King's coming to Selma. It's going to be a wild weekend. The stores would sell out of ammunition. The damn hardware store, they go buy 2x4s, they get beers, they gas up their pickup trucks, and they posse up like, woo, the Negroes about to march for our city. This is going to be fun. When he went to Selma, when he came to Chicago, he went to march here in Chicago, and the white boys rubbing their heads together. Yeehaw! It wasn't until them Afro bell-bottom wearing, jive turkey, disco listening Black youth, the children, was like, I tell you what, when H. Rap Brown was like, and when Stokely Carmichael, when the generation that was mentored and educated by King was like, we no longer commit to nonviolence. Boom, like that. Things started to flip. We no longer to commit to nonviolence. You put your hand on me, I'm going to break it off. And Dr. King condemned that. Dr. King wanted to distance himself from that. And they were like, well, Dr. King, the people you condemned are forcing us to change, but we don't want to give them credit for forcing us to change. So we're going to give you the credit. We're going to give you the Nobel Peace Prize. We're going to call you to the White House and sit you down in the Oval Office and get a picture so that we can tell Black people the lie that peace and calmness and negotiation and respect, not them brothers with the shotguns and the overalls, but them brothers carrying the Bibles and wearing them suits and them pencil ties. That's the way you want to go. So after 68, all through the 70s, 80s, and 90s, my generation was tricked into believing, well, if you want something, if you want America to stop hurting you, to stop killing you, you just got to make a peaceful appeal. And you got to learn how to speak standard English, maybe get a college degree, and conduct yourself as a proper citizen, and then they'll pay attention to you. And as we fell for that trick, between 68 and 98, between 68 and 2008, we spent an entire generation losing everything we fought for and gained. We're more segregated than ever, more incarcerated than ever. The police were as brutal as ever. And then we figured out, okay, then we had more respectable Negroes that could speak standard English, that wore professional clothing, that had degrees and titles, come to tell us again, well, let's demonstrate to white folks that we are lawful, respectful, and worthy. And then another generation after that was like, nah, give me that brick. I'm about to go get me some Jordans. Give me that brick. I'm about to go bust up in here and get my mama some frozen chicken. And let the whole world see we no longer respect. It's a social contract. Black folks don't read political. Young black people ain't never read Jean-Jacques Rousseau. They never read Plato's The Republic. I've read those books. And the philosophies of democracy and consent of the governed, they know instinctually. I ain't got to obey the laws of a state that doesn't respect my humanity. You want me to stop at the stoplight, pay my taxes and all that other jazz? Then you got to give me something. You can't govern me without my consent. Hell, we all heard all our life, taxation without representation. This country lies and says it was founded by a revolution. A bunch of rebels came together for freedom. This country is built on lies, but so is the consciousness of most black folks. And I'm saying all that to say, it is a repeat of history, a repeat that we should not allow to happen. My son was at the Black Lives so-called. Every time black people came and said, stop killing us, the media would say, well, that's Black Lives Matter. Hell, I just got a call about 2 weeks ago from the man who runs the Black Lives Matter protest. Here, he's the official head of the Chicago chapter of the Black Lives Matter. Shout out to Kofi. I'll get him on here to tell you. So this is another hustle. I'm not even blaming Black Lives Matter. They don't control CNN. They don't dictate anything to the Democratic Party. I know y'all like to believe that. It is CNN and the corporate infrastructure. They're doing the same damn thing that they did in the 60s. And then they're going to tell our descendants, well, hashtags and slogans. A good argument will get you freedom from your oppressor. So Black Lives Matter, you should come out. And when the white folks, anybody that is officially within Black Lives Matter, y'all get props. Y'all did some things. I ain't say y'all ain't done nothing. Any group that's worthy of praise, if you look hard enough, will find areas of criticism. And you know, if you're successful, the top dog, people gonna be hating on you. We all know about hateration. But I think Black Lives Matter should come out and say, listen, we appreciate white folks want to give us a Nobel Peace Prize. We love all these millions of dollars going into our fund. But real talk, G, we didn't do this. Unaffiliated, unassociated, black youth in the street, burning this system down. We denounced burning the system down. And the young people burned the system down and gutted and hollowed it out, looted this MFA. They're the ones who did it. And we denounced them while they were doing it. And we regret denouncing them. And we believe that human dignity, regardless of what's written in a law book, human dignity demands, at the least, allows for people to strike out against those who strike against them. Violence against unjust violence is always just. Defensive violence. I mean, say something. Don't just sit there and suck up the credit. It ain't right. But moving on. Again, this is BroDiallo Show. And it's just, I mean, Dr. King denounced the riots in '68. He denounced them. And then turned around and took credit for what the riots accomplished. Black Lives Matter in 2021 denounced the looting, denounced the calls for violence, and said no one affiliated with Black Lives Matter will engage in any of these unlawful actions, and then it's going to stand there and take credit for what the unlawful actions have accomplished. It's 2020. We got the internet. It wasn't no internet in Dr. King's day. If Malcolm had a Twitter account, man, it would have been so lit. Can you imagine if Fred Hampton had a YouTube page? Anyway, well, they should now. We can amplify and perpetuate their voice, propagate their teaching. So they should have. But I digress. Anyway, BroDiallo Show, Q4. I want to talk about the saga of Black masculinity, but I was just having some issues getting going this morning. And now the sun is trying to tell me to go outside and play. Like the sun is going to come in and get you. It's a bright, sunny day in late winter, early spring Chicago. And I want to talk about the saga of Black manhood because I'm encountering more often. It used to just exist on the internet, this whole alpha male madness thing. I didn't really, but now I'm starting to encounter brothers face to face that are bought into this alpha male type motif. And it was very curious to me because I just had another exchange with an alpha male. And a lot of times they'll come with me, they try to disarm me. They were like, brother, I respect what you say. I listen to your radio show. I look at your YouTube videos. I read some of your articles, and I respect a lot about what you say. And I always know, now let me not say I'm not that cynical, but oftentimes that whole buildup is to set you up for a knockdown. So this brother wanted to come and tell me about alpha male and simping, what alphas do. So I tried to explain to him what's ironic. And I know y'all scientific nerds are like, well, alpha male is a false concept, and the scientists that concluded that invented the term. And when you look at wolf packs and other mammals that go in packs and herds, and the dominant male, shut up. Don't come at an alpha male with that nerd stuff, because they alpha males. They ain't no nerds, no punks. They jocks, not dweebs. So, and we know words don't have meanings, they have uses. So if you know they're using the word non-scientifically, and even sometimes out of context, just find out what they're saying. They might be using the wrong terminology, but they're trying to articulate an idea. And what these dudes do is they look at the mighty, majestic lion. They look at the raging bull over all his cows, his heifers. They look, I don't know, maybe because the walruses, the dominant and elephant seals, they're pretty alpha in that context. They go and beat up the other weaker males and then get a bunch of cows into a group that they can have sex with. So, but they also are kind of flabby. They don't have like six-pack abs, walruses and elephant seals. But you get the bull elephant with the big tusk. So we understand what they're basically trying to say. The masculine male elements, chest, abs, and penis, the front, and the biceps and the calf muscles. They are saying that because in biology, men have denser bones. I worked as a radiographer for over a decade. I can attest, I've seen it with my own eyes. Men have denser bones, more muscle mass, have more strength. They in adrenals, they tend to have higher levels of adrenaline and testosterone, which are the hormones that are linked to aggression and strength and muscle building, manly things, right? So even though they're not being scientifically accurate, they're not really using this term alpha as a scientific term. They're using it as a colloquial or an aspirational term. But this is my argument to the guy. Because a human alpha is basically the opposite of what they call a submissive or a simp, or called the opposite of a beta male. And as he defined what a simp was to me, and he and I were going back and forth, and he was telling me about what a simp was, everything he said was a simp would be applied to the very animal species that he calls alpha. Because a simp is one who caters to women instead of putting his own needs, his desire before women. But if you look at the bull elephant, his obligation is to gather as many women, i.e., cater to. You can't gather, it's hard enough to keep one female of the mammalian species under your wing and within your company, let alone these alpha males that might have dozens of females. They have to cater to them, or else the females would. So the bull elephant is a simp. And then what's another thing that they talk, catering to and doing what you can to attract. Alpha males literally do everything, whether they're roaring, whether it's rams butting their head together. Alpha males, whether it's growing their plumage or having the longest tucks, alpha males do things exclusively in the wild to attract women. But if you are a human alpha male, you're supposed to be indifferent to what women think and what women want. You're supposed to not cater to a woman. Then you're a simp human if you cater to a woman. But every single alpha male species, mammal that lives in groups, and even some bird species like peacocks that are the alphas, that are the ones most likely to pass their DNA on to the later generation, to contribute to Darwinian evolution of their species, they all cater to women, do everything in their power to cater to women. So how are you, an alpha male, or is you or is you ain't? If you're an alpha male, you need to be one of them dudes, dealing with your cuticles, flowers. You shouldn't walk anywhere without a box of chocolate and a bouquet of flowers ready to hand to any woman. You should be throwing compliments at women. And when a woman says jump, you need to say how high. You need to be turning cartwheels for women if you're a true alpha. But y'all, like I said, a man that is able to, or prioritize being attractive to and keeping the company of a woman, y'all call a simp. You got to fix that. And then another thing, this alpha male thing, he's the breadwinner. My woman sits at home and waits for me to feed, clothe, house, and shelter her. And as her financial benefactor, I get to dictate what she does with her time and her energy. But if you look at the lions, which is probably out after the wolf pack, the lion pride is the main symbol of a lot, many from Rasta, many machoist, chauvinist, black male cultures and belief ideologies. They have the lion. A lot of these cultural Afrocentric brothers, they call their beautiful dreadlocks their mane. But the lion waits on the female to feed him. The lion is a simp. The timber wolf, they hunt and coordinate in packs. They are extremely social. The gray wolf, the red wolf, the wolf species, he doesn't tell the female wolf, wait in the den. They leave the puppies behind. They might leave one or two dogs, male or female, to look over the cubs while the men and the women go out shoulder to shoulder to hunt. That's simp energy. Waiting for a woman to go out and catch a gazelle, or letting her come with you. And then you going out to catch a caribou, and she says, "Ooh, that's a nice caribou." And he was like, "Let's go after a different one." No, this one. So again, and I could go on. There's so many examples of how male, quote unquote, alphas behave in ways that are contradictory. An alpha male is what determines an alpha male. The fundamental determinant of an alpha male. It's not how strong you are. You can look at our closest relatives, the apes, the gorilla. He's a vegetarian. Most of their, but what I'm saying, you look at bonobos and chimpanzees. A lot of times, but let me say this first. Well, let me say this first. their findings, uh, biologists and pygmatologists, people who study pygmies, are finding that as the chimpanzee species is evolving, the chimpanzees males that tend to be more affectionate, that are more gentle and thorough in their grooming, tend to have higher potential for mating than the overly aggressive males that are shunned by the breeding age females. The whole purpose of being an alpha, alphas only exist for one reason, and that is to pass on their DNA. No other reason for being an alpha. They're not alphas to impress other men. But whenever you look at alpha males, they're all in the huddle with other men, huffing and puffing at each other, homies over hoes. But when you look at the animal species, like I said, the alphas keep the company of females of their species, not the males of their species. But all that said and done, you've wasted all your alpha energy if you don't have the capacity to pass your DNA on. And what do alpha males do? Of the human species, they literally go to some of these sites. Don't join, don't comment, because they are relentless. They're like mean girls. They'll gang up on you and just tear you down verbally. But just look, a lot of them take pride in the fact that they don't kowtow, cater to, and they don't need a woman. Yeah, I don't need a, these punks, these simps, these beta males, they need a woman to validate them. I'm such a man. I don't need a one. I don't want nothing feminine or soft around me. Then you're not an alpha male. I don't care how many push-ups you can do, how many guns you own, how hard you work, how many calluses you have on your head. If you can't get the female of the species to desire to keep your company, not just for sex, but from nurturing on, because alphas don't just, pack animals don't just reproduce, they also stick around to make sure those offspring thrive. So just impregnating a woman and walking away is not enough. That's reptilian. You're a reptile. Snakes, crocodiles, lizards, turtles, they tend to lay their eggs and walk away. So you got some reptilian, not alpha male. They don't live in packs. They don't live in groups. They tend to be solo. But we do have some also like bears and tigers. You can be a tiger male, not a lion, because the tigers tend to be solitary. Grizzly bears will impregnate the female and leave her. So I'm just saying, I don't even want you to agree with me. I just wanted you to be accurate in what you believe. Sometimes, because if you can't even get people really rooted in what they claim to believe, how you can never change them. So I do this with Christians, Muslims, alpha males, people I fundamentally disagree with, capitalists. I get them to at least acknowledge the reality of what they're repping. And then when they were like, okay, this is what I rep. And I'm like, well, let's dissect what you stand for. Before I try to convince you to stand for what I stand for, I want you to stand for, truly understand what you're standing for. So anyway, I see so many alpha males who take pride in the fact that women don't like them. A woman can't deal with them. The average woman won't, I am about to, you talk about bringing something to the table. And I'm like, you failed at alpha. Because the whole purpose of pack male alphas is to gather the company of the female of the species, procreate with the female of the species, and then cooperate or coordinate or oversee the successful, thriving development of the offspring. And if you're not engaged in that, you can't define yourself as an alpha, because every single alpha male, everything else they do, the things you like about the alpha male, how they're aggressive, how they can kill, how they're strong and muscular and feared, all of that becomes moot. It's like having the nicest car in the world with all the features, all the bells and whistles, but there's no gas in it and the battery's dead. It looks great on the surface. You look hella alpha and hella manly on the surface. But if you letting these beta males, these simps, get the girl, reproduce with the girl, marry the girl, court the girl, have courtships and love affairs and all these things these simp punk males, us soft males do. But we're the ones not just procreating because, again, if you impregnate women, because I know some alpha males that got children, but they haven't imprinted upon those children. They may be biologically your offspring, but because we're more than biology, if you haven't been there to put your ideas, your thoughts, your dreams, your ambitions, to impart that to your child on a day-to-day basis, develop, then you failed at alpha malehood. And I understand. We're going to, of course, do another segment of this, hopefully, next Monday, the saga of Black masculinity, because I want to talk about what real Black masculinity, because I think everybody's got it wrong. I think there's only one true manifestation of Black masculinity, only one valid manifestation, one purpose of Black masculinity. And we might have to talk about masculinity in general. And it's a sensitive topic. Toxic masculinity, and Black men have this great, and some brothers might say I'm wrong, but every time a Black man rises up, irritated Genie, Tony Sotomayor, Dr. Umar, we have literally made millionaires, we have made Tariq Nasheed household names, Black men, we have made honored leaders. Wow, this lighting is really bad because of the sun. What do you want from me? I'll see if I can do something about it. If lighting is something you're into. But real men don't care nothing about lighting shade. Anyway, every time a Black man rises up with the promise of protecting Black men from effeminization, to guide and instruct Black men on being real men, Black men flock to it. And a lot of Black women too. I have some Black women coming to me defending Dr. Umar. I know when the irritated Genie was exposed as a wife beater and a predatory man, at the same time he was starting a movement to protect Black women and Black manhood and straight Black pride. And when he was exposed as a abuser of his wife, alpha male, and a lot of women started to shun and attack and stalk and condemn his wife. So it ain't male excuses, but most things in human societies aren't gender exclusive, even though it manifests different. But we'll get more into that. I want to talk about when Black men act Black masculinity, from the time when we were considered subhuman cattle or chattel, to the time that we got our freedom, to the time that we sought to define for ourselves what manhood was, but we failed to purge a lot of the oppressive um, elements, a lot of the Western contamination. So anyway, there's a lot to cover here. Hopefully we'll be able to cover in the show. Thank you for listening. BroDiallo Show. Please support Patreon. CashApp is now available. I just had that a couple of weeks. Shout out to everyone who supports my efforts here. Because I am feeling a little better, I will resume the book reviews. Everything is coming back this week. It's just too much to talk about, and there's a lot of topics I'm going to be working to bring back. The Q&A will be back this week. Everything's coming back this week. I just needed some time to heal. I'm still healing, but at least I'm well enough to do the broadcast and everything. Q4 Radio. Shout out to Q4 Radio. Hopefully this year we will be back in the studio sooner than later, as the pandemic has plateaued in the city. Numbers seem to be leveling off, if not reducing. So I really look forward to get back in the studio, even though I enjoy the ability to remote broadcast. But as the city opens up and I begin to travel, I will still be able to take this whole setup and remote broadcast from Nigeria, Sheum, holla at your boy, New York City. When I go to New York, Oakland, Old Town, home of the Panthers, an ongoing struggle, I will have a setup. So wherever I go, I can still do, I got the software, I got everything. So anywhere I go in the world with an internet connection, I can still do my BroDiallo Show radio broadcast But when I'm here in the city, I prefer to be in the studio. So we're working towards that. Wear your mask, social distance. Remember, even if you have the vaccine, you still have the capacity to spread the virus to others. And so you still are a potential threat to the non-vaccinated. So please still be mindful, cautious, considerate, and empathetic. BroDiallo Show, Q4 Radio, and I will see y'all next Monday morning. Peace.